He said Truman wanted to leave Korea and make 8th Army the scapegoat. That cannot possibly be true. How did Marshall react? Oh, yeah, he don't get mad often. Whoa. May 20th, 1951. For a few weeks, the front has been quiet, and the UN forces have even had difficulty locating their enemy, while still wondering if and when he is going to continue his big spring offensive. Well, now they can wonder no longer, because the answers are yes, he is going to, and now. I'm Indy Neidell, and this is the Korean War. Last week, Douglas MacArthur wrapped up his testimony in front of the Senate hearings, digging into his dismissal as UN Forces Commander. In the field, there was a bunch of UN redeployment, but also concerns that the communist forces were just about to reignite their offensive. There were some signs that the enemy was shifting force towards the east last week, but UN Command thinks it highly unlikely that that's where they're going to attack because of logistical issues with the mountainous terrain. And even midweek on the 16th, though, the 8th Army intelligence staff has no solid evidence of real enemy movement east of the Pukhan River, and many officers doubt that the shift even goes as far east as Chuncheon. That day, they discuss what they think are the current Chinese and North Korean dispositions. And on the basis of this, 8th Army Commander Jim Van Fleet believes the main Chinese attack will come in the west central zone, heading for the Han River corridor, and probably 5 Chinese armies strong, but also with strong attacks towards Seoul from Route 1 and from the Uijiangbu corridor, and maybe also on the Chuncheon-Hongchong axis. Thing is, yes, Chinese Commander Peng Dehuai has moved 5 armies, and yes, they're ready to attack, but into the area along the Soyang River between Chuncheon and India, and they're being screened by PVA, Chinese 39th Army, and KPA, North Korean 3rd Corps. The attacking armies are the 60th, 15th, 12th, 27th, and 20th Armies. Peng is, in fact, going to, contrary to what his enemy believes, launch his offensive over here. His reason for shifting the main effort into the higher Taebacks, despite the portended logistical problems, may have surfaced when Chinese captured in March, April, and May were asked about weapons, training, and tactics. Almost unanimously, the captives considered the army's armament, preparations, and precepts to be inadequate for the conditions of battle in Korea. Depreciating the man over weapons doctrine, they conceded that men in superior numbers could defeat an enemy superior in other respects only if the enemy's superiority was not too great. Perhaps Peng chose to attack through some of the most difficult ground on the front because the rugged, rigid, and sparse road net would reduce to some degree the UN Command's advantage of superior mobility, firepower, and air power. So the objective of the main effort, which begins the evening of the 16th, is for PVA 15th, 12th, and 27th Armies to cut off the 6 ROK, South Korean, divisions in the east from the rest of 8th Army, completely annihilate them, then destroy US 2nd Division. KPA 5th and 2nd Corps will support this. On the western flank of this, 60th Army will screen the attacks from US 1st Marine Division. PVA 19th Army Group and KPA 1st Corps further west will also make attacks, but over in the east really is the main effort. So PVA 27th Army attacks ROK 5th and 7th Divisions, hitting hard at the boundary between them and pretty much immediately pushing them off their positions. Around midnight, US 10th Corps Commander Ned Allman gives the go for them to withdraw to the no-name line. Their artillery manages to make a successful withdrawal. Most of the infantry, not at all. Those guys are scattered by enemy attacks, lose communications, heck, they lose control. By midday the 17th, the only ROK 7th Division troops that can be pinpointed are 2 battalions of the 3rd Regiment, the Division Reserve, engaged by the Chinese some 10 kilometers below the no-name line. ROK 3rd and 1st Corps hold up okay the night of the 16th, but Allman's midnight withdrawal order leads ROK Army Headquarters to issue similar orders to those 2 corps the morning of the 17th. ROK 3rd Corps withdraws, but is closely pursued by the KPA, and its artillery is badly mauled by the Chinese at a roadblock. The ROK try to break through the roadblock, but the Chinese are stronger, And with the disappearance of ROK's 7th Division on their flank, ROK 3rd Corps is soon in danger of either being crushed or surrounded. US 2nd Division is also in danger of being surrounded because of the disorganization of ROK 5th Division. Now, 2nd Division mans the lines from left to right with 9th Infantry, 38th Infantry, and Task Force Zebra, an armor infantry force. The French battalion is their only reserve. 3 enemy divisions attack the night of the 16th with particular pressure on the boundary between 38th and Task Force Zebra. Further east, a battalion of ROK 36 Regiment is broken. The French get the job of collecting and reassembling them and paying close attention for enemy infiltrators. A column of Chinese pursuing those South Koreans is absolutely destroyed by minefields and wire flares aside the road, and artillery and tanks on it. Around 2 a.m., the Chinese managed to dislodge elements of 38th Infantry from positions on the heights, which opens a gap for them to try to get behind Task Force Zebra. That gap is kept under heavy mortar and artillery fire by the UN forces the rest of the night, though. And at dawn, the Dutch battalion is ordered to send some force to close it. That force doesn't have the numbers to push through the Chinese to Hill 1051. So the whole battalion tries, but the Chinese by then have taken the hill. So the advance is stopped while artillery can try to soften them up. A Chinese-speaking radio operator with the Dutch intercepts a Chinese order to send all arriving troops east of Hill 1051. So they're obviously going to try to exploit the gap. The French are now ordered to help prevent this, but before they can do so, 38th Infantry reports literally thousands of Chinese pouring into the gap by 11 a.m. A larger force heading for Task Force Zebra, a smaller one heading for the French. Those units of 23rd Infantry still in reserve are sent to back up Task Force Zebra. But though the Chinese force continues to grow in number as the day wears on, they do not attack. 2nd Division Commander Clark Ruffner, through 23rd Infantry Commander John Childs, orders the Dutch battalion to advance at 3 p.m. and takes a helicopter to supervise things, but it crashes. He's okay, but by the time he makes it back to headquarters, the Chinese on and around Hill 1051 have stopped the Dutch. So, Ruffner orders a defense, sending the Dutch to Hill 975 and 38th Infantry below Hill 1051. Van Fleet reorganizes and reinforces, moving the 9th and 10th Corps boundary eastward, so some units take over parts of other sectors to get more force in threatened areas. He has ROK 3rd and 1st Corps pull back to the Waco line, a couple dozen kilometers below No Name. ROK 3rd is told in no uncertain terms they must take out that roadblock, and 10th Corps is going to take positions that can hopefully link up with them. ROK 8th Division is to come up from down south and join 10th Corps. The 15th Regimental Combat Team arrives at 17th and 18th, along with a battery of artillery from 9th Corps. There are a lot of moves. That boundary shift allows elements of U.S. 1st Marine Division to relieve the 9th Infantry. And another big thing, late the 17th, Almond orders the artillery to quintuple their action, creating a Van Fleet day of fire, and concentrate all fire on avenues of approach within 3 kilometers of their own defenses. The main artillery and aerial targets that night are enemy units opposite 38th Infantry. Those forces are strong enough to break through the wire and penetrate the UN lines, but not strong enough to fight off counterattacks. The Dutch report the Chinese passing Hill 975 in waves of thousands, taking massive casualties from artillery, but still coming on. They engage the French after the sun goes down the 17th, forcing them to withdraw, leaving open the left flank of the 23rd Infantry and occupying the hills alongside Route 24. The Dutch also leave Hill 975 in the face of the swarm of enemy alongside them. 23rd Infantry takes a lot of heat the morning of the 18th and gets the call to withdraw, but in order to occupy a new line east of Route 24, they'll have to deal with another enemy roadblock. Childs orders a 2-pronged attack, but the Chinese have superior numbers on the high ground, so that's not going to fly. The Chinese are now pressing from the north, so with little option, Childs orders the trucks of 2 battalions to try to run by the roadblock with armor escorts to somehow get out of there. Now comes one of the dangers of lack of communications. In the morning, the French learn that the Chinese have mined the road. but that information somehow gets lost being passed along. So when the convoy makes its run, a mine disables the lead tank. The trucks back up behind it. The Chinese savage the drivers and crews as they jump out and down a 7-meter embankment to take shelter in a stream bed behind some tanks. A second tank shoves the abandoned vehicles off the road but blows a track from a mine. So the rest of the convoy is ordered to try to follow the stream bed. But it's chaos. Under small arms, machine gun, and mortar fire ranging in from the west, panicky truck drivers drove helter-skelter into the hills beyond the stream bed. Some vehicles caught fire, ammunition trucks exploded, others eventually were halted by one or another accident of terrain. Stragglers and abandoned equipment, weapons, and personal gear dotted the track of the two battalions as they made a tiring march under flanking fire from the west for part of the way and under drenching rainstorms that broke around 6:30. More than 150 vehicles, many carrying heavy weapons and ammunition, have been left behind for the Chinese. The various shifts and withdrawals the 18th have made 10th Corps' lines a big salient. The 1st Marine Division faces Chuncheon in the northwest, 3rd Battalion 38th Infantry is at the apex, 9th Infantry, then 23rd Infantry are on the northeast shoulder, and with ROK 5th Division having been driven back, an engineer battalion and a tank destroyer company from ROK 7th Division defend 10th Corps' east flank. The rest of ROK 7th is still being found, corralled, and organized. Allman is trying to organize force to beef them up. Remember, ROK 3rd Corps was told to absolutely deal with a roadblock of their own while pulling back. Well, ROK 9th Division takes the lead, with ROK 3rd Division in the rear holding off the KPA, and by mid-morning, they are predictably being squeezed from both ends. Both ROK divisions break and head for the hills, leaving over 300 vehicles and all artillery behind. By the 19th, Allman has shortened his lines and pulled back from the apex of the salient, and to reinforce his eastern sector, the 7th and 65th Regimental Combat Teams have been called in from Seoul, arriving the 19th and 20th. On the 19th, though, ROK 3rd Corps is still scattered and chaotic, but with the singular blessing that the enemy does not make contact. ROK 1st Corps to the east has made an orderly withdrawal to Waco Line. So by the end of the 19th, Chinese 9th Army Group is opposite 10th Corps' new eastern sector, though the fighting has suddenly slackened off during the day. But with Chinese continuing to mass ahead of the 2nd Division, the slack appeared to be mostly as a result of attempts to move fresh units forward to take over the assault. It seemed that enemy forces would not only quickly revive their drive, but with strong Chinese reserves and North Korean divisions on the move, they would increase it. But you know what? The UN forces don't have to just stay there and take it. Or they can stay there and take it, but also do other things elsewhere to make it irrelevant or relieve the pressure. Already the 18th, UN Forces Commander Matt Ridgway suggests to Van Fleet they can relieve the pressure in the east by attacking further west into the Iron Triangle and sabotaging enemy communications. He recommends sending 2 divisions up Route 33 towards Chorwon. Intelligence says the Chinese are now fairly thinly stretched west of Chuncheon, and it would take many days, if not a week, for them to shift substantial force from the east to oppose such a move. On the 19th, he enlarges the whole idea, now thinking the Chinese forces could be trapped. I mean, sure, stabilizing things in the east is a very real issue, but Van Fleet thinks logistical difficulties in the mountains will slow or stop the communist advance, whatever the case, within days. And then he could maybe send force driving behind them to cut off resupply and retreat. So he's not that worried about the current enemy attacks. So that counteroffensive that he's come up with, when does it launch? Well, it launches today, May 20th, and I will tell you the tale of how it goes next week, because now I must continue the tale of the MacArthur Senate hearings. MacArthur finished his testimony a while ago. It's the Joint Chiefs of Staff that continue being questioned, partly about bombing or not bombing the Chinese and North Koreans. They explained that there were practical and not only ideological reasons for not bombing the Chinese beyond the Yalu River in Manchuria, as MacArthur wanted to do. The Chinese air bases there have radar-controlled AA batteries, which they found out from operating along the Yalu are very accurate. They also just don't have the aerial strength for sustained attacks against the vastness of China. But something else here. They did not give permission for saturation bombing of North Korean targets as part of a post-war strategy. They want a united Korea one day. And the Northerners might not accept that if they just bomb their cities to smithereens. Also, neither Secretary of Defense George Marshall nor the Joint Chiefs agree with MacArthur that the ROK are very fine troops. Marshall, Chairman of the Chiefs Omar Bradley, and Army Chief of Staff Lightning Joe Collins all give pretty serious critiques of the ROK forces, pointing out that the ROK 6th Division was scattered twice a few weeks ago by attacks that other units were able to contain with not that much effort. The first time, they fell back like 30 kilometers, which of course jeopardized those units on their flanks. Bradley says the ROK forces have, in the 11 months of the war, lost enough equipment to fully equip 10 divisions. Marshall does actually lose his cool once under questioning. Alabama Senator John Sparkman reads a United Press account of MacArthur's views on a message Truman sent him in January. Mac said back then they might find it necessary to evacuate Korea. According to the UP, General Courtney Whitney, speaking for MacArthur, said that Truman intended to pull out of Korea and make 8th Army the scapegoat. Marshall said, not in the most remote manner did the president intend to make the 8th Army a scapegoat. Marshall blushed and his voice became rigid. That would almost be treasonable. Marshall never raised his voice, but no one who heard him doubted that he held General MacArthur and his entourage in utter contempt. The hearings will continue next week, as will the rest of this coverage of the Korean War, but this week is over. With heavy Chinese and North Korean attacks in the east, a UN counterattack brewing in the center, and questions and more questions in Washington, D.C., where there is a lot of serious disagreement to virtually every policy advocated by Douglas MacArthur earlier this year when he was in overall UN command. Or more than disagreement, really, the military bigwigs seem to say the diametric opposite of what MacArthur wanted to do is what policy should have been and currently is. It will be very interesting to see what the U.S. general public, both those for and against MacArthur, thinks of this and how it affects their perception of him. I have a hunch it may tarnish some of the shine on his reputation. Hey, something I haven't mentioned in a while, but which is still very much going on, is our Rise of Hitler series on the World War II in Real Time channel. We are currently in early 1931. That series and this series is brought to you courtesy of the Time Ghost Army. And that is what finances all our productions. So for more of this, join the Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. These are the newest commissioned Army officers, and Catherine Vera Lane is the Army Member of the Week. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.